Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm Yemi and I make DIY videos. Today I'll be making a half elastic band skirt. So the first thing I'll be doing is folding the fabric to a quarter of the hip circumference, because that's my biggest circumference basically. So my hip is like 30. The hip I'm using for this skirt is 42. I'm adding 2 inches for zip allowance. So 42 divided by 4, which is a quarter of that, is about 10.5. If I add 2 inches to that, I'll have 12.5, and then 0.5 for my seam allowance. So I'm first of all measuring the length of my skirt. My skirt length is going to be 20. The band will be 2 inches, so that will make it 22. But then by the time I fold the bottom of the skirt, it will probably be around 21 inches in total, like the final look. So I'm marking off 20 inches for a start. You can make your skirt however long. You can make it how long you want it to be, basically. So I don't have my ruler here, and that's why I'm using my hip curve to do this. So from my waistline to my hip line is 9 inches. That's the difference. I remember that place is 13 inches because of all the calculations I did. I'm marking off my 2 inches for my button allowance. This skirt is not going to have a zip, but the buttons in front are actually not going to be functional for opening the skirt. It's mainly for decoration. So that's what I'm doing the buttons for. So I'm marking off the 2 inches I'm going to use for my buttons. By the time I'm done with the skirt, you would see what I'm talking about. You understand why I put buttons there. Now I'm going to mark off. I've marked off the 2 inches for buttons, so I'm going to deal with the rest of the measurements now, and I'm measuring from the line after the 2 inches for button allowance. For my waistline, the waist is 30 divided by 4 is 7.5, and then I'm adding 0.5 for my seam allowance. The same thing here. I discovered I had not folded this properly, and it wasn't 13 inches exactly, it was like 12.5. I had to fold it properly again. So 42 divided by 4 should give you 10.5, and if I add my 0.5 seam allowance to that should be 11. That's what I'm trying to achieve with that. So I'm going to have to draw my straight line again to separate the button area from the rest of the skirt. Now that I'm done with that, I can just mark off my half-inch allowance for my half-inch for my seam allowance basically, and I'll be connecting the waistline to the hip line right now, as you can see. Next thing is to mark where the skirt is going to start to taper, and that should be around your knee, maybe like 1.5 inches above your knee or 1 inch above your knee. It will not be at exactly your exact knee point basically. So now I'm using 17.5 for that. From waistline to that point where I want it to start to taper, I'm using 17.5. You can use 18 or 19 depending on how tall you are and how long your skirt actually is. So the waist to knee area I'm using is 17.5. I'm drawing a straight line there, and I am going to mark off a different kind of measurement there. So what I'm going to do is my hip line minus 6, my hip circumference minus 6 is 36. I'm going to divide that 36 by 4, and that will give me 9. So make sure that you're marking from after where your button allowance stops. So once I mark the 9 inches, I'm going to add half seam allowance again to that, and I'm using my hip curve here because this is exactly the purpose for my hip curve, not for straight lines, but I don't have my ruler here. So from that point where the knee stops, I'm going to just draw a straight line to the bottom, and that's kind of the shape of the skirt. Now I'm going to cut it. I'll be using this shears. Is it pinky shears? I think that's what it's called, because I don't want my fabric to keep fraying anyhow, and I know this is the kind of fabric that frays a lot, so I'm using this kind of scissors on it. You can use the regular scissors if that's what you have, but since I had this one, I decided to use it. I'll probably be doing like let's say a haul or just showing you things I bought from AliExpress, sewing supplies I bought from AliExpress. I'll probably do something like that soon, so watch out for it. So this is the design for the skirt that I had in mind. Since the front is already like the exact waist measurement, and this skirt is not going to have a zip or button to open it, we're going to have elastic at the back. So my waistline at the back is going to be much bigger than it should actually be. Now you understand what that means when you see me cut the back of the skirt. So now I'm placing the front part that I just cut on top of another layer of fabric, which I folded to quarter of my hip measurement. But then for this back part, I folded to more than quarter of my hip measurement just because of the waistline. What I'm trying to achieve is having the waistline and the hip line with making them the same measurement. Basically, I'm trying to make them have the same measurement so that the skirt you can wear the skirt from down up, pass through your hip, pass through your waistline, and everything will just be fine. Now I folded the 2 inches for my button allowance over so that it doesn't confuse me, and I'm just going to mark with my chalk the rest of the skirt. For the waistline, which is going to be different, I'm going to be using 14 inches. I explained why I'm using 14 here. 42 is my hip line minus the 15 I already used in the front. I'll have 27 left. So 27 is going to be like the waistline for the back, and that 27 is going to be gathered with elastic, and that's how it's going to become the original waistline that we need, which is 30. So 27 plus 1 inch for my seam allowance. It's about half inch for my seam allowance, right? No, 1 inch because 2 sides, so 0.5 inches for my seam allowance, and that would be 13.5 plus 0.5, and that's 14. That's pretty much how I arrived at 14, but I have like my calculations explained, so you can just check that out to see. I'm just going to cut. As you can see, the waistline at the back is much bigger than the waistline at the front. But the idea is by the time I gather the back with elastic, I'll be able to wear the skirt without the need for a zip or a button. So this is something I'm just trying out. It's not something I've done before. I'm really hoping that it turns out nice. And of course, if it does not turn out nice, you'll probably not see this video. Just being honest here. So make sure you cut that straight to make it look nice. So when I gather the back like that, the skirt is pretty much just going to look nice that way, and the waistline will be in perfect shape and to align with the front. That's what I'm trying to achieve. Now that I've cut those 2 pieces, I'm just going to pin them together so that they are, they don't scatter basically. And I'm going to concentrate on cutting the band for the skirt. So like I said earlier, the waistband for the front would be much shorter than the one for the back, because of the way we actually cut the skirt right now. The front waistband is 30/2, which is like 15. Add my seam allowance of 1 inch, and that will be 16. So I'm going to cut 16 inches for the band for the front, and for the back, 42, which is the hip line, minus that 15 will give me 27. If I had 27 to my seam allowance of 1 inch, that would be 28. So the band for the back will be 28 inches. The band for the front will be 16 inches rather. So let's go ahead and cut those 2 pieces. For the width of my band is going to be 5 inches. So when I fold it, it will be 2.5 inches. The half inches for like the seam that used to join the band to the skirt, and then the 2 inches will be the band. I might end up reducing this band to 1.5 inches if I do not find an elastic band that is up to 2 inches in width. So that really depends on what happens. But I like to cut, in faith that I'll find elastic, and if I don't, I'll just reduce the width of the band to maybe 1.5 inches or 1 inch, depending on what happens. So I'm cutting the one for the front now, and I'll be using 16. But something in my mind just tells me to cut an extra 1 inch, because things just happen when you're sewing these things, and you just want to be cautious, right? So I'm going to end up cutting 17 for the band for the front, but I'll cut off the excess if I don't need it anyway, which I shouldn't need it, but just in case I need it, just be ready. in case anything happens. This fabric doesn't stretch, to be honest, so I don't think I should have issues, but let me just cut the extra since I have the luxury. So that's the one for the front. I'm going to go ahead and cut the back off camera because there's really no need to show you how to cut the band again. So because this fabric is kind of short, I'm going to have to cut my band twice and join two different pieces together. It's not long enough to cut the entire 27 inches at once, so I'm just going to have to cut it twice. So I've cut the two pieces that I want to use that will join together to do the back waistband, and this is where I'll have the elastic inside. Don't worry, by the time you see the sketch you know what's going on. Thank you so much for watching. Now please check out the joining or stitching video. See you in my next video. Bye.